Now, today is Friday, and Friday is our storytelling day. So today we're going to provide ourselves with some emotional support, some dialogue, and some learning through an exploration of the power of storytelling. And this week, it's Pam Stager's turn to lead us in storytelling. Pam, I'm turning it over to you.
Okie dokie. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, so let's start with Mayday, Mayday. Happy Mayday, everybody. It is the first day of May. It is the end of a work week. And just to clarify for the newbies, we only meet during the weekdays, not every single day of the week, which is why Renee gets lonely on the weekends. I know it's also the end of classes for some of you, and definitely we said goodbye to that very long April yesterday. So today I'm hoping we can explore creation, culture, COVID, and character stories. We'll see what we can get through. I'm in a room where my internet connection sometimes goes unstable, so if somebody will just give me a hearing thing with your ear if that happens, so that I know I need to move to another place to continue. So I'm going to be hoping that you will share some of what your story is when it comes to stories of creation and culture later when we move into breakout sessions, which we always do during the virtually viral Hangouts, just so that you new people can be prepared. It's nice, I think. For me, it's one of my favorite parts of the Hangout is when we get to talk in even smaller, more intimate groups. So I was originally down for like the pedagogy of storytelling. So this is my educational yada, yada, yada. It's like when storytelling, when students are engaged in the process of creating a digital story, they must synthesize a variety of literary skills, yada, yada, yada. You guys all know this because you're all media professionals and librarians who have been doing this work for eons. So that's my only educational piece here. You'll have to find the education in the rest of it. So I'm going to start by role modeling a little bit of my own creation and culture story. And the last time I facilitated Story Day, I started with my first encounter with Renee Hobbs during her Media Literacy Scholars Program at Babson College, and the fact that I did my final project of telling a story. And this is my last adventure with a course with Renee in digital authorship, which I highly recommend. It dragged me kicking and screaming into the 21st century online, gave me all kinds of tools. I had to learn new platforms, apps, tools every single week, and I am much better off for it now. And my grandkids are even impressed with what I can do. But this was my first attempt at taking a story that I've told orally and on a stage many times, and putting it into a podcast form using the Anchor app. So I am going to share that story with you now, and then we'll do a couple more resources, and then I'll give you some questions or discussion ideas, and then we'll break into breakout groups. Okay, does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that I will share is, can you see in my screen, in my picture, this? So this was the inspiration for this story, and it came via a present I got in 1993, a goddess calendar present that I got from a friend. And I was just so amazed when I came to the April page and this story about goddess Easter, and a story about her that came from the Saxon culture. Because in my storytelling adventures, I was always sort of jealous of all the other cultures like African and Asian that had tons and tons of all these really cool stories. And I never felt like I had one from my culture that I knew about. So when I found that, I was just very, very excited. So I haven't told this story in a while, so I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. It'll take about 5 minutes. Long ago and far away in a part of the world called Saxony, there passed a winter much harsher than the one we have just endured. One in which the snow and cold came early and stayed late, and the people yearned for spring to arrive. In a small village in the mountains, no one wanted the spring to return more than one young girl who was known for her deep connection to the natural world, and who, when the weather was mild, could most often be found gathering wildflowers or conversing with the small woodland animals in the nearby forest. This early spring, however, with the snow still so deep and the wild woodland creatures so hungry as a result, her mother had forbidden her to still go anywhere near the woods. Although the girl deeply missed her time and friends in the forest, she obeyed her mother out of love and respect. One April day, however, after a few warmer rainy days had melted some of the snow and ice, and the girl overheard some men in the village talking about the path they had trodden to go hunting deeper into the forest, she couldn't stand it any longer. She ran home as fast as she could to share the exciting news with her mother. "Please, can I go back into the woods now? Please, mother, there's a path and it's safe." "I don't know about that," her mother replied. "It's still very cold out. You'd have to stay bundled up, and I wouldn't want you to go in too far or stray off the path at all." "I won't, I promise, mother. I only need to go as far as the first maple tree so I can wrap my arms around it and feel the sap running through its veins and know that spring is truly on its way." And without giving her mother a chance to change her mind, she grabbed her outerwear and ran out the door yelling, "Thank you, mother, thank you, I love you. Don't worry, I'll be back soon." When she got to the edge of the forest, she found the hunter's path and obeyed her mother by staying on it, and immediately started to look around for any sign of spring. As she was walking and searching, her eyes noticed something small, dark, and moving further along the path. She moved slowly towards it. As she drew closer, she could see that it was a bird struggling to free its feet that were frozen to the top icy layer of the trodden snow. While one wing flapped weakly, the other was clearly still and broken. As the girl approached, she removed her hand coverings. Then, slowly crouching down, she cupped one warm hand over the bird's body and placed the other one over its feet until she could feel them wriggle free from the now melted ice and snow. Then she cupped that hand under the bird and lifted it to her face. Although she could feel its tiny heart beating, one look into its cloudy eyes and she knew the bird was not long for this world. With a breaking heart, she fell to her knees, held the bird to the heavens, and cried out, "Oh, Goddess Aistre, where are you? Why are you so late bringing spring to our land? Look at what is happening to your little creatures. Why have you forsaken us?" The girl closed her tear-filled eyes and held the bird close to her heart. But in the next instant, there was a flash of bright light, followed by a huge rainbow which arced over the forest and came to rest on the path in front of the girl. And the goddess Easter, in all her radiant splendor, descended the rainbow and came to rest in front of the girl. The girl was too awestruck to speak. She just extended the small bird towards the goddess who took it into her own hands.
I'll leave it to others to.
Can you save it? The girl finally asked timidly. It's not within my power to fix a broken wing, the goddess said slowly, and a bird who can't fly won't last long in the forest. The best I can do is to change it into another shape. The girl thought about this for a while. Surely, she thought, the bird would prefer to live in another form than to die in its present one. She looked back at the goddess and nodded her head. Goddess Istre stroked the bird from the tip of its beak to the tip of its tail, and as she did so, it transformed into a beautiful large white rabbit. When Goddess Istre placed the rabbit on the ground, everywhere it hopped, the snow and ice melted and spring flowers arose. Because this rabbit had once been a bird, it retained the ability to lay eggs. And because it had been transformed by the goddess of spring, the eggs it laid were the colors of the rainbow. Seeing this, the girl was overjoyed and hugged the goddess in thanks, which of course meant that despite her own transitions to adulthood and elderhood to come, she would retain the eternal spring of wonder and adventure. And from that day until this, people still color eggs and wait for the Easter Bunny to arrive with its gifts. And whether they know it or not, they are celebrating the miraculous transformation that is spring.
I am going to break you up into some groups, and you, hold on here, and you will get a chance to interact. The rooms are open. Click on the link, join a small group. Make sure you introduce yourself if you don't know who you're talking to. And let's talk creation. We're talking about the stories of creation today. How cool.
Hello.
Hey. So I'm trying to find, I did not keep the prompts, but we have a creation story or
story or a reaction to the story she told.
Oh my God.
Do you have a creation story, or do you want to react to the story she told?
Oh my God, she did an amazing job.
Yeah.
She really did.
It's how she told it as well. She's a master storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just like.
Yeah, we were all like 8 years old immediately. Yeah.
It was great. It was great. My 13-year-old came out of her room and she said, what's going on? And she sat and listened. It was great.
Aww,
Oh, that's nice.
the story brought her into the tent. Do you know, I think
Yeah.
the moment I really felt the story was the tension between the mother and the daughter. Of course, I lived that tension. Part of my creation story is my rebellious teenage years, right? Where my mother and I was determined to escape what I thought was just the repression of growing up Catholic in suburban Detroit. And I did all kinds of things that tortured my mother. I changed my name because I didn't want to be called Renee anymore, right? Being called Renee Shilkuski was fine. I don't know why I was fine with my crazy last Polish name, right? But I wanted to change my first name. Right?
What did you change it to?
Say again?
What did you change it to?
I changed it to Leah. Leah seemed so much cooler than Renee. So the scene in Pam's story that like evoked feelings of creation were my own teenage years as I was trying to figure out who was I when I wasn't a member of the Shilkuski family. Like, because I didn't know what that was, but I was desperate to figure it out.
So I want to share something about a COVID story. It's more of a letter that was brought to my attention. It's called An Imagined Letter from COVID-19 to Humans. And it was written by Dorinka Montico from Italy. I'm sorry, by Kay Flint. It's a story basically that shares, this is our story, and I'm giving you a chance to think about your actions. I'll put a link to it in the chat, but it was pretty powerful, and it just made me think of, what stories are going to come out from this time period. Um, you talked about traditions, and I'm just thinking of myself being Jewish. And we just had Israel Independence Day, and a week before that, Holocaust Memorial Day. And they're great stories, many, in regards to telling about a certain time period. And I kind of want to take a trip into the future and see what children's books will be created to talk about this time period.
Nice.
There's two really interesting things about that, Ariel. One is this idea of COVID's point of view
Yeah.
toward us, which again, storytelling is always from a point of view. The story Pam told was from the girl's point of view. The story from COVID's point of view is absolutely fascinating. And then I also like your point about Pam's story was set back in some mythological time, but stories from the future, looking back on this time period, you're right. That is, imagining those is absolutely fantastic and interesting. I bet a lot of creative writing could come out of that.
So I added it in the, I shared it with everyone, but it's
Thank you.
on YouTube. Yeah.
I was just picturing my COVID-19 story that I would write, which would be, I stayed home, I watched Netflix, I pushed an Afghan. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Where is the conflict? Where's the conflict? Where's the tension?
Why, he's out washing the car right now. That's where the conflict is. It's raining, I might add. Whatever. No, but I like that's a really, so much of what I'm reading, They Went Left by Karen Hess.
Oh, that's such a great book.
It was in the New York Times Review of Books this week, and I just started it. It's about a girl who loses her family in the Holocaust, but she and her brother have vowed to, find each other. And I'm listening to Echo, which is set at the rise of the Third Reich. Like, that's such a rich storytelling time, but because the conflict is so much about how people are interacting with each other, and I really wonder, because our conflict, if you will, is kind of about not being able to react with each other, or finding different ways of communicating. I wonder how that will come up, if it will be as rich a slurry for stories.
Right. Well, the theme that in Pam's story was kind of humans versus nature, right? Because even the goddess was limited, right? Even the goddess couldn't bring the bird back to life. The best she could do was transform its shape. So man versus nature is a conflict that is a kind of a COVID conflict right now, right? And I do think, Barb, you're right, though, that the conflicts that are happening in the family drama are harder to tell, right? Because we've got an Instagram culture right now where everybody has to make it look like everything's fine, right? And so I feel reluctant to tell you my conflict stories about my own ancient grandpa over there of 40 years who's taking up all kinds of bad habits. He started smoking cigars now. What the fuck? That's not a good thing to do. That's not a good coping mechanism.
Oh,
right? But I can't do anything about it. It's like yelling at him does not make him stop smoking the cigar.
No.
So it's not, yeah.
one good thing about nature right now is that it's springing back, right? All of the, like, what the pandas mated for the first time in the zoo in 20 years, and
There's
all
a
of the
story.
animals are taking back over the areas, and there's a proliferation of birds, and like it's amazing. Like the animals love it.
Yeah.
That's a happy thing.
That's a great point.
That's a really good
They're not
point.
smoking cigars.
That's right. Yeah, nature's springing back, right? Having sex, reproducing. I see the hostas popping out of the ground where I live, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. That's a good
Yeah.
byproduct of all this.
Yeah, yeah. And
This year-
obviously the theme of renewal is something we all like, stories of hope and inspiration. That's partly why we read stories, right?
Mhm.
And I, in ancient times, you imagine they gathered in that cave and said, oh, someday things are going to be better, right?
Yeah.
So we can hope.
Yeah.
Somebody will play these Zoom videos. They'll be
In the future, right? We'll play these Zoom videos in the future and go, well, they were really crazy. They were really crazy.
Someone like Scott will be sharing. This is, if you want to go back to 2020, in 2030 or things like that, they'll go and say, this is what they did,
Yeah.
some news archive or Zoom archive.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. Or it could be that this form of communication is now going to be the way we communicate from now on. We didn't used to do this, but now because of COVID, we started doing it. And when it was over, we liked it so much, we just kept doing it.
That is so crazy. I just wrote that in an assignment for you that is due today about how my sense of connecting with people online has become such a place of comfort for me that even with this ends, the idea, I threw a party on Sunday night for 40 people from all over the country, and I'm throwing one next month, the same sort of group of people, but more people and people from all over the world. I'm making it earlier so the European people can come. Like, I don't want to give that up. It's so much fun. So I don't know, the expanding nature of it is a positive.
Yeah, because if you think about it, it's about creating a story circle.
Yeah.
Right. It's just it's a story circle that is not limited by geography.
Can I read you something amazing that Alex forwarded me something that she'd written. She's talking about, now. It's not about making lemons out of lemonade. It's saying, gee, there are no lemons. And I know you were hoping I could make some lemonade, but someone handed me this interesting fruit and I'm going to make a new drink. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, that's funny. That's timely. So my daughter, who's 13 and amazing, wanted lemonade. We didn't have any lemons, so she made a cherry strawberry smash that was much better than lemonade. Right? That's what we had. That's what we had in the refrigerator, and so she made do. And but yes, you're right. We all have to make new drinks.
Yeah. And I told my husband.
Go ahead.
I was going to say my husband was, crabby this morning. And he's very difficult to, he doesn't want to be comforted. He just wants to vent. And yet I insist on comforting. But I read him that and he was like, wow, that's really a good point. The heavens opened. I was like, oh, I'm so glad. Like it worked.
Yeah, because I should go watch Stanley Tucci make his drinks because that's pretty amazing.
Oh yeah? Tell me more.
Yeah, that was
last week and the week before last, the Stanley Tucci first, like 2 weeks ago, he made a Negroni. And then last week he made a Manhattan. And he's just so sublime about it, like very zen and like makes quarantini. My daughter's correcting me. He made a quarantine. And it's very compelling to watch Stanley Tucci do anything, quite honestly.
I
I know.
rewatched Julia and Julia last week because that's one of my favorite Stanley Tucci movies is him
Oh,
being
good.
Julia Child's husband. I love him in that. But I do think it's interesting about how creativity happens when you don't have lemons, right? And so, that's why stories are so satisfying to us, is that they show us that even with nothing, you can create something,
Yeah.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved about the story that Pam told was like the focus on nature and humans not being able to rush nature. And that to me tied into the virus and the cycle of the virus and, things that we have no power over. Yet, what I love, the other part that I really keyed into was when she talked about like growing up from a girl to older, like an adult, and then to an older woman, and keeping that wonder like inside of her. That's where I was like, whoa, this is an amazing story. So
And I just wanted to share one thing in regards to what you said, Alita. I agree with you 100%, but the people that have the problem are those that don't take time to notice the flowers or to notice nature or to realize that there is a time for everything.
Right. And to respect that power, right? So the story really says respect this power, right? And then I love your point about the ending also. It's interesting how the story in the context of COVID has a different meaning, has a meaning that like we make a new meaning out of this story in this context. And like you said, I think the ending, when I heard it years ago, it had a meaning, and its meaning now is different because of COVID. And so isn't that amazing how the same story can be refreshed by the context, right? To have new meaning. Oh, you guys, we got to mention that when we go back. We got to go back to
That was Passover this year.
Bring that up, all right?
Sounds good.
That was awesome. Awesome discussion, you guys.
That awesome.
Oh, we're in the main session. Son of a gun.
Unbelievable. We are all back.
Yeah.
Let's do some synthesis, Pam. What do you think what themes do you think might have come up in the small group conversations that we had? Who wants to go first?
Well, I hope it was as wide ranging as ours was, and we never even got to Marie's story, but yeah, had some really interesting cultural background story sharing, and just all kinds of things. I'd love to hear what
we ended on Neanderthals, so
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Say more, please.
that wasn't me. That was
Maureen.
That was Maureen. Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about DNA analysis, and I said that my son had gotten one of those like 23andMe things, and that it gave you an indication of how much Neanderthal was in your background.
Cool.
Which he thought was very interesting.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What themes and topics and issues came up in your discussion? Let's share around the big room. Something meaningful that came up in the discussion that you want to share with our whole group.
Well, we talked about a lot of things. One of the things that stood out to me, because it was at the end and I can only remember things at the end, was that you can hear the same story, at different times, and it will take on different meanings depending on the time that you're in. So this story might mean something at Easter. It might mean something when you're, an older woman. It might mean something different when you're a teenager, and it could mean something different like during this time, during the virus.
I'd love to kind of paraphrase the pieces of the conversation. Lavon was just starting to talk about how her stories can be convoluted. And I think that's pretty relatable. We had acknowledged the Gutenberg parentheses, which is a concept that's new to me, and I would love for somebody to drop a link below because I still want to chew on it. But just the idea that there's before the Gutenberg, and then like we keep pushing the right parentheses beyond, and this notion of should we just understand that the stories exist beyond the parentheses. And then Frank and I went back and forth because he had been feeling in a funk for the past few weeks, and now I was kind of feeling in a funk, and we were relating about when we talk about those parentheses, and when we talk about, let's say, like, to simplify it in a 3-act structure, Act 3, we will always be rewriting and manifesting in our lives. The Act 2 is this waiting period, this isolation period that everybody's kind of engaging and enduring on their own. And the idea is just that eventually we'll share some of these stories, but with the context of Act 3, so that it's a full story that we can, write and rewrite and rewrite.
Awesome. That's powerful. Other ideas that came out of your discussion that you want to share?
The theme was that stories, we're all storytellers. Stories are everything. Stories.
I think it was fascinating. In our group, we were talking, we got on the topic of adoption because one of our cohorts was adopted. And so we were talking about identity. And then April brought up the idea of transitional identity throughout time and identifying yourself in different ways. So we had a really rich and deep conversation about identity. It was fascinating.
So you can't separate the story from the storyteller, right?
Have you ever wondered if the people of the...
That wasn't me.
And I think, but one of the questions too is kind of how does, the story of people who came way before you, who you never knew, either maybe because you were adopted or maybe they're just, people from several generations ago, how that impacts your own story,
We hit on a similar kind of idea on how many generations we are removed from that initial immigration story for most of us. I don't know if we have any Native Americans in the crowd, but and how that evolution has impacted us generationally. The example we gave in my case was Seder, but there are other cases that came up as well.
Yeah, in our group, I was sharing how that story, I've heard Pam tell that story before, and for whatever reason, the emotional energy of that story for me is the tension between the teenage daughter and the mother, because for some reason that activates my own angst, probably still unresolved, about what a terrible teenager I was and how I tortured my mother. And even though I am now a mother, I still identify with the teenage girl rebelling against her mother. And I feel like, in some ways, the identity crisis that is in that story, Pam, right, is she is searching to figure out who she is when she's not in the orbit of her family. And she does that by connecting to nature, right? So this is a man versus nature story, or a woman versus nature story, but there's a relational tension there, a generational tension that is also, I don't know, just really timeless and powerful and beautiful.
Yeah, and I also said that for me, as now in my own elderhood, it really is about, the child in me, the protective mother in me, and the wise woman in me. Like, all of those are there. And I think even when younger, that wise woman is in you, just, hasn't been given play yet. But yeah, anyway. Do I have time for just running quick through the last couple of things? So let's see, share screen.
We are thinking about the implications of storytelling for pedagogy, right? You better be thinking about that, because that's something to think about, right? Whether
Yeah, one of the things that I read last week that really got me was a teacher's editorial about how she knows that no matter how hard she tries, her students aren't learning the same way they would if they were in the physical classroom. And I found myself really questioning that. And I know it's a lot because of watching my grandson, who, when he is not on an online, so he's a sophomore, finishing his sophomore year at University of Miami online. And when he's not in an online class, he's looking at documentaries or on YouTube or Khan Academy, or what he introduced me to and shared his information that I can use is Masterclass. And so I've been exploring Masterclass. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have ever done a Masterclass? Oh, they are so amazing. And he made his mom and I watch Aaron Sorkin's Masterclass, knowing his mom was a big West Wing fan. And what I loved, Colin had just also shared with me an astronaut who does a lot of YouTube videos that are amazing, and where he really explains the whole astronaut experience. Oh shoot, I'm running out of time. Never mind. I'll keep going. So let me just do this one for now. So I immediately went to Neil Gaiman and downloaded his 94-page The Art of Storytelling, workbook that comes free with the class. It's an amazing resource if you haven't checked it out already. I think they're doing a 2 for special right now, like everybody's doing specials and discounts. So you can join and you can give a free membership to somebody else. Like I used Collins and just put in his name and password, and I got in. And then there's 6-word memoirs, and up earlier now, StoryCorps Connect. StoryCorps, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is doing during COVID-19 a special way so that people can do interviews. And I just think it's a perfect time for doing that. My grandson out in LA and I are scheduling an appointment later today for our interview. And it's just amazing. And they have a list of questions that are specific to COVID-19 that are pretty amazing, that anybody can use. And to use some of those questions and do story sharing that way. And then the other resource that I'm hoping you might know about, am I frozen? No.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, is Hit Record. And Kathleen, you may want to look at this specific one for your next week if it's going to be about empathy, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who started this crowdsourcing collaborative, somebody earlier was talking about, Lauren was talking about doing her photographs and then having a friend do a musical background. That's exactly what this is. You create whatever you want to create. If you imagine it could be better with animation or music or whatever, you put it onto Hit Record and somebody in the creative community will add to it. 6-word memoirs, here's mine for you. Happy weekend. Leave home, mind, explore.
I can't think of a better way to end Friday than with those 6 words. A round of applause for Pam for leading us in storytelling, and thank you for coming to this amazing Hangouts. You guys totally rock. Thanks for being part of this community. Have a safe weekend. Wash your hands a lot. Take care of the people you love. And we'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Leave
Bye,
mine.
everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
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 That's so wonderful.